Hello guys, this is Just One Guy, and this is my tutorial series, Unity for Noobs. Now in this episode, we're continuing on with the multi-platform RPG project. And in this episode, we're going to set up the camera. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can either do a top-down camera or a third-person camera. But I'm going to do the third-person camera, but I'm also going to show you the top-down camera just so you know how to do it. And we're just going to put in a few functions which won't be useful in this episode maybe, but it'll be useful in the next episode, and I'll get to that in a minute. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to assets, and you're going to go to import package, and you're going to import the utility package. And the utility package is going to come with a script called smooth follow right here, and that's essentially the script we're going to be using to do this. Now let's go over to our setup, which is right here, I believe. Oh, right here. Okay, you want to go into scripts too, and we're going to create something called the camera manager, and that's going to be the script to actually manage our camera, but we'll put that on a bit later. And we're going to make a prefab of the camera. Now I've already made two prefabs just to demonstrate the two different methods of doing it, and I'll show you it right now. Let's just do it. Well, first, the third person way of doing it. The camera will look like this. Well, sorry, this is it? Nah, I've got this wrong. Let's just delete that. Put the third person camera into the scene and make sure it follows the player. And that'll be the third person view. That's the view I'm going to personally go with. Sorry, we'll fix this in a minute too, but this right now we've designed the player controller script where it needs to get know the camera. But this will be the one I'm going with personally, just because I feel it's best if you're going to put something on console and Android and computer, because it'll best show the view on all three, and you'll get the most out of this view, and the experience will remain mostly the same across all three platforms. But you can also go with the top-down camera, which is here. And let me just get that and that, and do that. And this is the top-down view right here. Now it's important to note that when I put the camera in the top-down view, I didn't just change the angles that it looks at the player at. I've also changed the camera to orthographic mode, because from a top-down view you can see it better than in a perspective mode. It shows some stuff kind of weird in perspective. Now you can do it that way if you want, but if you're gonna go with the top-down mode, I recommend putting the camera in the orthographic mode like this. Okay, now let's create the camera prefabs, and I'm going to leave this right here just for demonstration purposes. Just so we can look back and reference this later. But we're going to create a new prefab, and we're going to name it the third person camera. Wait, camera third person. I always name my scripts like that with some type of generic name. That way, if I'm ever searching them, I can find them easily. So right here, I'll put camera third person. And since that one is the name of this prefab, and I'm going to use this one as a reference, I'm just going to put a little 1 right here just so I can tell the difference. Later on, I'll erase that when I delete this one right here. But we're going to get rid of that camera, and we're going to put the camera into the scene. Won't let me drag an empty prefab in here. Okay, let's do this the other way. Create a camera. And now we're going to put our camera manager script on here. I forgot create the script and create the camera manager script and put it in scripts. And now we can go and we're here and just add the script camera manager. Now let's go into the editing. Now essentially what we're going to do right now is we're just going to copy. Well, you got to open up the smooth follow script because you wouldn't have it open. So just go to standard assets, utilities, and click on that smooth follow script, and it should open up. And click on your camera manager script, and you will have both of those up. Now let's just rearrange it to make it a little easier to see. We got to go to the smooth follow script, and we're just going to copy and paste this whole thing. Now we're doing this for a couple of reasons, because later on we're going to make some changes to this script, and we don't want to actually change the smooth follow script. We want to make our own unique script. Just make sure I'm copying everything correctly. All we need is from here, there, all the way up. And we're just going to copy, go into camera manager, delete this right here. Accidentally deleted a bracket. Make sure you can see my mouse. Just hit escape for that. Okay. Now that we copy and pasted everything, let's just check to make sure we're not going to get any errors, and everything seems to be fine. Now we've copied and pasted everything, and this is essentially the smooth follow script that we have into the camera manager. Now we're going to add a couple of functions just to set the player up for the stuff we need. Okay, let's go to the start right here, and we're going to create a function. Oh, sorry, wrong scripting language. We're going to create a new function called setup player, and that's essentially what it's going to be. Now this is a little complex to explain, but we want our character to be able to switch levels and everything like that, and we don't want to have to deal with the camera each level. So what I do is I parent the camera to the player. I parent the whole camera prefab into the player, and then when the player switches from a level to a new level, when he switches out, it parents to him, and when he switches to a new level, when he switches out from a level, it parents from him, it deparents, and then when he switches to a new level, it parents the object to him. That way you can have a player and a camera set up all in one without having to go back and forth and setting up a new camera each time you switch a level. And that's essentially what this function is going to do. And it's going to set up all the variables so the player knows what the camera is and the camera knows what the player is. So let's just set that up now. And we need it to take a bool. I think that's how you write it in here. We're just going to call it parent. Now we just need a reference to the player. Ooh. Wrong scripting language again. Which is going to be the transform, and we're going to get a public transform. Sorry. And we're just going to say player. And in the start function, well, we're going to create another function called get player. Now that's another important thing to note is the naming convention. Every time we want to get something, I'm going to call it get, just so we can make the functions easier to read. Okay, now if I remember how to do this, since the camera is going to be parented to the player, all we need to do is say player equals get component and parent, and we're just going to look for our player controller. Ooh, sorry. Gotta look. Apparently I got multiple player controllers, but we're just going to go with this one and hope it's the right one. I think they write get parent a little bit different. The get component a little different in C#. remember it's like this. And we just need to transform. Yep, that seems to be correct. And we're going to say, we're going to put a little if statement here just to make sure that there is a script. And this is just a little debugging, just in case that it's not. And it'll give the player, it'll give the person a little message just saying, hey, we can't detect the player, just so you know what's going wrong if it doesn't find the player. Actually, we're gonna go debug log error, debug.log error, and that's just gonna give us a little error if we can't find the player, to let the person who's scripting know that something's wrong. Cannot find player. And we're just gonna go right here and put that into our start function. And that'll find the player. And let's go into our setup function. Let's see how we're going to do this. If parent, I'm just going to write else. Now if let's see, if parent, we want to, if I remember correctly, it was transform dot set parent. Yeah. And it just took a bool. No, it took a transform and a bool for the world position. So the transform we want to parent it to is the player, and we wanted to keep the world position, so we're going to put true. And the other one is if we want to deparent it, so we're going to go transform, spelled that wrong, dot set parent, and since we want to deparent it, we're just going to put null, and then we're going to put true. And we're also going to put this into the start function for right now to just deparent it as soon as it starts the game, so the camera can act normally and not be parented to the player, because that would mess up the movement of the camera. And we're just going to go false right there, and that's the end of our setup, I believe. Just let me check everything. Okay, let's just create the prefab. Wait for this ridiculously long compiling time. Come on. Apparently we have an error. Let's see what it is. Okay, that's my fault. I'm not used to writing in C#, and the way they write get component always screws me up a little bit. It's just this time, at least I didn't spend like an hour trying to figure out what I had wrong, because that's normally what happens when I try to write get component in C# rather than JavaScript. JavaScript is a lot easier and I prefer it. Okay, compiled. Let's go back to our prefab. Prefabs. Let's get our camera. We got the camera manager on. Okay, that's what we forgot to set up. I knew it was something. Let's go back into the script and go, where is it? Target. Target equals player. Now later on we're going to change this because we don't want the target to be player. We want the target to be a pivot point close to the player, and that'll help with some clipping issues, which we'll go over next time, how to get the camera not to clip through the wall. But for now we're just going to set this up simply like that because it's a lot simpler. And we gotta wait for it to compile again. It's the worst part. I wish they had some sort of quick compile in here, but no. Because we essentially only changed one script, and that's all we need to recompile. But it just does every script in the entire game. And this should set itself up, so all we should need to do is put the camera in here. And now delete this camera. Let's take our prefab and put it as a child of the player. And now, if everything goes right, everything should set itself up. We're going to set these variables 10 for the distance, 5 for the height. We're just going to come in and put 1 right here for rotation dampener and rotation height. And this just controls whether it moves, well, how much it moves up and down. The height distance from the player and the rotation distance from the player. Well, how fast it can rotate around the player. If we put it at 0, any one of these at 0, it won't go up and down, and this will make it not rotate. Okay, let's just hit start. And it looks like everything. Nope. Okay. And that's what we forgot. I knew I was forgetting something else. In our player controller script, we need a camera. We need a reference. We have a reference to the camera, so the raycast can come out the camera and go into the scene. And we need to set that up, and that's what our error is coming from. So we'll say player dot get component, and just set this up, player controller dot cam, I believe it is. Check to make for sure. Yep, cam. And did I actually use a transform or the camera? I used the camera. So equals get component camera, and that'll be the camera on this game object. Getting an error right here. I must have wrote something wrong. I forgot the other parenthesis right there, or whatever that is. I don't know what that signal, that sign is, but everything should be good now. Normally I write this up beforehand so you don't really see these mistakes, but since this was the camera manager script and I didn't want to create 2 of them, I just winged it for today. And I figure it's a pretty easy script to write because I wrote this like 1,000 times. Let's hit play again and hope everything is correct. And everything is set up and is correct. Our player is rotating at the proper speed. It's creating the marker object, and everywhere the beam is firing correctly from the camera because it's reading the mouse input relative to the camera. So everything is set up correct. Now let's set up our top-down camera. We're just going to delete this secondary third-person one that we had for reference, and we're going to change this and remove the one. Now we're going to set up our top-down camera again. Let's just reference the variables. Okay. So we're going to delete this because we don't need it. We're just going to come down to our third-person camera, and we're going to hit Control D. And apparently I got to rename it again because it didn't take the first time. Okay, now we're going to name this camera top down. Now I don't put spaces in between my lettering because just in case I need to reference it in script. You can do that, but it'll make it a little more complicated if you ever need to reference this, and that's why I don't put any spaces in between. I just capitalized the letters similar to how the program does it. Let's just go into the camera manager. We're going to set it up for top down. We're going to set the distance at the height at 7 and the distance at 0. And we're going to go into the camera and we're going to change the perspective to our orthographic. And now we're going to parent that camera to the player. I'm going to delete our third person one just to make sure the top down one works. Parent it to the player and hit play. And there you go, a top down camera and a third person camera. Now as you can see, as soon as the game starts, it deparents the camera from the player, and that's going to be important later in the level switching whenever we switch levels, and it's always good to write that up in the beginning. Also for UI code that we're going to write later, because we're going to need it to deparent from the player. And essentially what it does is just wrap everything up in the player so he can switch levels, then deparent it when he gets to a new level. But as you can see, it's working, and that's it. In our next episode, we're going to go over avoiding camera clipping. Now that won't be so important if you're using a top-down camera, or I guess if you have trees in your game, that would be kind of important. But it's going to be a different method for the top-down camera, because we don't want, with a top-down camera, you don't want to avoid camera clipping. What you want to do is you want to make a mesh transparent. But with the third-person camera, you just want to do like a camera avoidance system, and that's what we're going to be doing next time. That's